Hello and welcome to the Sound of Science, the place where we deconstruct unscientific reasoning. Please consider to like and subscribe if you support science. Thanks for watching. Hello, you wonderful people. Today I stumbled upon the YouTube channel of a guy calling himself Chris.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. CC here, Chris.
And Chris is a flat earther. Yay.
Everything that's going on is because of flat Earth, okay?
And as so many other flat earthers, Chris is religious. Being religious and thinking the earth is flat is a rather popular combination.
Then you understand that there is an intelligence behind this design. And that's what people fail to understand. And that's what they're hiding. We have no free will only because the Creator knows what we're going to be doing.
And of course, our governments have been lying to us about this, and they keep the flat earth a secret. And those who do not see this are hopeless. That's kind of the basics of Chris's worldview. Everything else comes from that delusion.
Most people are hopeless. They're hopeless. They're beyond hope. Okay? And if you don't see now that everything is a lie and everything is bullshit.
And you may not be surprised by now, but of course, if Chris thinks the earth is flat, God did it and governments hide it. He of course also is an anti-vaxxer. Surprise!
Oh, Biden's got COVID, guys. He's been triple vaxxed, quadruple vaxxed, up the yin-yang. He's still got the virus. And that is why I decided to opt out.
Although Chris ticks all the boxes of a standard flat earther, he is not just your everyday flat brainer. No, Chris is involved in a ridiculous amount of conspiracy theories. The airline industry, politics, space, even the weather. Chris says it's fake and everything is a lie. I first thought Chris was just amusing, but the more I see of this guy, the more it worries me. Now I'm asking you to please stick around till the end of this video, because as we progress, you'll see that Chris's worldview gets more and more insane, up to a point where we perhaps should be worried about people like these. Let me show you what I mean.
Is because every time a politician opens his mouth, he's lying to you, okay? All they say is complete bullshit, nonsense.
So Chris goes a bit further than just being deluded. His silly ideas seem to have a political dimension too. He seems to resist everything regarding governments and politicians. Chris thinks that all of them only lie, and that kind of idea in some cases leads to radicalism. Let's see what kind of example Chris has to show you that all politicians are only lying.
My ass! You want votes, that's all you want. And you lie to the public to make them think about this imaginary freaking evacuation plan which doesn't exist. Okay, guys, wake up!
Really, Chris? Your local government is discussing an evacuation plan and you say it doesn't exist? That doesn't make any sense. We have thousands of examples of evacuation plans. Every organization I worked for had an evacuation plan for its main buildings. Every city I lived in had an evacuation plan for specific parts of the city. Most large events have evacuation plans. And Chris, when I look up the emergency section of the website of your local government, they of course have all kinds of plans and instructions and regulations put in place that are dealing with evacuation in case of emergencies. Anyone can look that up on the internet, including you, Chris. Chris, if you have expertise on evacuation plans, and if you think the evacuation plans of your local government need improvement, Just make a video about that and use facts and evidence to explain systematically what exactly is wrong. Because by just claiming that these evacuation plans do not exist, you are just telling utter nonsense. Unfortunately, this is still not where Chris's delusions stop. Have a look at this.
Water defies gravity. Rain comes down from this storm cloud, decides not to go down as gravity would pull it down, decides not to, and it decides to go back up into the cloud. So that's how hail works, okay? So that's breaking the laws of physics as far as I'm concerned, because it can't be possible. Rain comes down, it goes back up over and over and over again until it forms hail. Come on, that's breaking the laws of physics.
This is so awkward. Chris seems to think that either gravity or hail, or maybe both of them, are fake. No, Chris. Hail does not decide to move up in the sky again. It's just blown up by vertical winds. You see, if you think the Earth is flat, then perhaps your flat brain can only imagine wind moving horizontally, but wind moves vertically as well. And Chris, you live in a hurricane area, so you've witnessed with your own eyes what strong winds can do. Strong winds can pick up bottles, garbage cans, and even entire planks of wood, lift them up and drop them a mile further down the road. That is what strong winds can do. So it's a piece of cake for strong winds to lift hailstones. That has got nothing to do with defying gravity or breaking the laws of nature. It just means that a strong wind can be more forceful than gravity. Chris, have you ever heard of a hang glider or a sailplane? A sailplane can weigh hundreds of pounds. The whole reason why these things can fly is because the pilot directs the sailplane to an area where the vertical winds go upwards and apply a force to the plane that is stronger than gravity. And then the plane is lifted up in the sky without any engine. If the wind can lift an entire sailplane, Chris, then what is so difficult to understand about the wind lifting hailstones? But behold, it's getting even worse.
There's no way they could predict anything at all. Weather? How could you possibly predict weather with something that's on the ground that's moving? You know, look at the Weather Channel. What's the only thing that's flat and standing still? Earth. What's moving? The clouds. That's the only thing that's moving in that map. They've never changed that map, and they never will, because they can't.
So now Chris apparently thinks the weather or the weather forecast is fake, maybe both. And he thinks he can prove that because the weather forecast shows maps on which the land is static and the clouds are moving. Oh dear, Chris, that is so that you can read it. If the weather forecast would show a map with a moving landmass, nobody could see what the weather at that location would be. It's just a matter of practicality. Chris, you use navigation software in your car. Possibly you use Google Maps. So have you ever sent Google a complaint that their maps are static and are not moving at 1,000 miles per hour? Maybe you should do that, Chris. But it gets worse and worse. Chris is now going to tell you that they, probably he means the government or those in power, they are causing forest fires from the sky. That is a pretty sick idea. By the way, appreciate the fact that Chris thinks that London is a country.
I learned today that heat actually causes fire. Yes, that's right, kids. That's right. When it gets to a certain temperature, all of a sudden things just combust. That's right. That's why they're getting all of these fires in these states that are seeing 105 degrees. And also in countries like London. No, I don't think so. I think they're causing fires. Causing fires from the sky Exactly what they did in California.
And of course, by now, you're not surprised that Chris thinks that the moon landings were fake as well. Take it away, Chris.
I know we never went to the moon because all of it was faked. And then you ask yourself, why did they fake that?
And of course, Chris thinks the Earth is flat and not spinning, or air traffic is one gigantic hoax, or maybe he thinks both.
Planes would be impossible to land on the ground. Absolutely impossible if you were spinning at 1,000 miles per hour.
Now, this is one of the sentences that shows that Chris never listens to any rebuttal of his ridiculous ideas, because if he had listened to his critics, he would have known that a spinning movement is not measured in miles per hour. A spinning movement is measured in rotations per hour or per minute or per second. Saying that the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles per hour is something like saying, oh, this brick weighs 20 volts. Speed can be measured in miles per hour. Spin can be measured in rotations per hour. So the Earth is not spinning at 1,000 miles per hour at all. It is spinning at one rotation per 24 hours. And that's something entirely different. Chris's idea of how the rest of the world thinks that the Earth moves is totally flawed. He has no clue about the basics of physics, yet he thinks he is spreading knowledge instead of buffoonery. Listen to this.
So, I basically worked this morning, and now I'm back home, and when I'm not working, I'm not getting paid. So, it sucks. I'm losing money right now. But gaining, or giving you knowledge, so at least I'm not wasting everything, okay? You're gaining knowledge by being here. You, by being here, are the smartest people in the world.
And of course, this is still not where it ends, because Chris also thinks that space does not exist. Why? Well, because he doesn't understand what the atmosphere is and what a vacuum is.
I didn't understand why why would they lie about it? I mean, if space existed and everything was up there, and at that time, obviously, I believed in space. I believed in all of that shit. You have two floors. One is vacuumed. The other floor isn't. You open up a hatch. What happens? Sucks all the air out of the other room below you. Why isn't that happening to Earth? Why isn't our atmosphere just being sucked into space? How can a planet even have atmosphere if we were in a vacuum of space? How? How is that possible?
Chris somehow seems to think that a vacuum sucks in air, but a vacuum does nothing. A vacuum is just a place with no or hardly any molecules in it, and therefore it has zero pressure. It doesn't suck in anything, for it doesn't contain anything that can apply any force on something. Instead, it's the other way around. Molecules under high pressure, preferably liquids or gases, they have the tendency of expanding into the areas with lower pressure. So a vacuum doesn't suck in the atmosphere. It's the atmosphere that has the tendency of expanding itself into space. But that doesn't happen because simultaneously, gravity pulls the atmosphere towards the center of the Earth. Now, even Chris should understand that the air closest to the surface of the Earth, although under high pressure, cannot expand into the vacuum of space because it has many miles of air stacked on top of it that pushes it against the surface of the Earth. So the air will stay there and not expand into space. But what if we go up 5 miles? Well, the air at an altitude of 5 miles indeed has less weight to carry of the air that is stacked on top of it. So it should be more easy for that air to expand into the vacuum of space. But because there is less air stacked upon it, its pressure is lower, and therefore its tendency to expand into space is also lower. So at an altitude of 5 miles, the atmosphere still sticks to the Earth. And with every mile we go higher up in the atmosphere, the air pressure gradually gets lower, because less air is stacked on top of it. At an altitude of 50 miles, the air pressure has dropped below 0.5% of the atmosphere that we have at ground level. That means that the tendency of the air at that altitude to expand into space is 200 times lower than the air on ground level. Finally, if we end up at an altitude of about 10,000 miles, the air pressure has gradually dropped close to zero. So these molecules only experience a weak gravitational pull from Earth. But since there is hardly any air pressure left, these molecules have little tendency to expand into the vacuum of space. So most of these molecules just stick to the Earth because of the gravitational pull. And that is why the atmosphere is not sucked into space. It's not very complicated. But especially for Chris, I will make it even more simple. Chris, if you think that the atmosphere should be sucked into space, then why don't you think that the water of the oceans should be sucked into the atmosphere? I mean, water pressure in the oceans is much higher than the air pressure. Compared to the oceans, the atmosphere is almost a vacuum. So according to your logic, Chris, the atmosphere should suck in all the water of the oceans right now. But that doesn't happen, because the gravitational pull keeps most of the water of the oceans in its place, and water pressure gradually drops when getting closer to the surface. So the tendency of that water to expand into the atmosphere is relatively low. Therefore, only little water of the ocean vaporizes, and most of it just stays in place. It's exactly the same with the atmosphere and the vacuum of space, Chris. I hope that helps. Now, of course, we could see Chris as a funny clown who has silly delusions that make us laugh. And it is tempting to ignore the serious part of this. But the insanity of people like these sometimes goes way further than most of us can imagine. And that has a dark side. See how Chris basically suggests that shootings are a hoax. That is pretty painful to people who have experienced these shootings or who have lost loved ones because of shootings.
That's why I don't believe in any of these assassinations. I don't believe in any of the shit that I see on TV. I don't believe in any of that crap because it's all staged and it's all propaganda. And thinking that all of this is real, that none of this is staged, shootings, buildings, everything, the weather, all of it's staged. All of it's done to create chaos, okay?
What if there would be more and more of these folks like Chris? People who think that the Earth is flat and space, air traffic, satellites, the weather, forest fires, shootings and even buildings are fake, and that all governments and institutions are lying about this and are keeping this a secret. What if people like these would get a foothold into politics? What would happen then? These people would possibly end the funding for space research because they think space does not exist. They maybe would end the use of satellites that can help us to predict the weather, that can observe the condition of crops, that can see the spread of diseases among cattle. They perhaps would end air traffic because it doesn't fit their worldview. They would maybe abandon research and education in astronomy, geology and physics because they think science is all lies. If people like these get into power, they just might bring back modern society into a second Stone Age and destroy the scientific progress that modern society has made for the past few centuries. It would be a very, very worrying idea if these people could transfer their ridiculous ideas to young people who then start to believe the same nonsense. And now it becomes really scary. Have a look at this.
Anyway, on Sunday I have to go to a baseball game. So if you see me in the audience, do not contact the police. I'm there because of my daughter. There's a school outing that they have, and I have to go to it. So I don't know how I'm going to react to it. I wish I could bring some flat earth shit with me and just put up signs and stuff, but I can't. I'm going to be with her at school, so I got to keep my mouth shut.
This guy has to go to a baseball game of one of his children. He basically would want to use a school event of his own children as a propaganda outlet for his crazy worldviews. That totally gives me the creeps, and it's very shocking. I'm sad and I'm angry at the same time. So this is it for today. Thanks for watching.